Mitch Gray, once again, thank you for joining me on a special edition of the Question Guy podcast. We are going through your book, and once again, for those viewing the camera, How to Hire and Keep Great People. So this book is a tremendous hit, and of course, I love talking about this book. And I know, one of the times we talked in the past, this was the long game for you, and so this book has been out for what, a year, maybe a bit
A
more than
year.
that. Yeah.
Yep, a year. A year.
And so what we're doing is we're going through chapter by chapter. And again, the big chapter that I love so much, chapter 7, Professor for a Day. But now, as we move forward, we get a little bit deeper into the heart and soul of what Mitch Gray is all about. And now he really thinks what you really think about um, hiring and recruiting, and really building the foundations of a strong workplace, strong culture, strong team. So let's get right into it. Let me talk to you about what the chapter title is, and then let me go ahead and ask the first question, because your questions for this chapter are really cool. I mean, they're really on the mark. Like, they're not vague, ambiguous, and they're not spiritually grounded. They're very grounded in what do you have to do in order to be successful here. So the chapter title is Where to Find Great People, and then in parentheses, if she offers dessert. So that's kind of a little
Mhm.
off to the side, but that's a hint to what's really in the chapter. And to be quite honest, this is one of your longer chapters. So question 1 reads like this, and we'll probably go into 2 questions here, maybe 3, but let's tackle this one at a time and see how it goes. What complaints have you found yourself using when struggling to find great people? And that's a real,
Mm.
that's an in your face, real question that anybody who's leading in that role, hiring manager, CEO, whatever, really needs to come to grips with if they're struggling with
Mhm.
keeping people. So let's hear it, Mitch. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I forgot I had asked that question. That's another reason I love doing these with you, because I think I've mentioned it before. You know,
Well, they're
when you do
serendipitous.
yeah, I mean, and when you do a project like this, whether it's a book or an album for musicians or a movie script, you don't you know the stuff because you have either experienced it or have knowledge of it, but you don't memorize. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I was actually reading an article the other day. I don't remember if it was about Steven Spielberg or someone along those lines, and someone asked them, how often do you watch your movie after it's finished? And they're like, never, ever. Like, you don't. And I've met recording artists that are the same way. They don't listen to their album after it's done. I told stories, I think, with you about an author that I knew. He was actually a professor in the seminary I went to, and this dude pumped out like 4 books a year,
Well,
and he was like, I think his timeline was like 2 years after publishing before he would read the book again.
because there's
So
so much
anyway,
energy put it into that project.
yeah, there is. And if you're promoting it and actively teaching, so I actively teach the book through coaching clients, through speaking engagements, through podcasts, and then I'm actively promoting the book. So you don't really have time. So anyway, I think it's funny when you ask me the question, they're like, man, that is a really good question. And that one is, what complaints do you find yourself giving
Yeah.
when you're looking for great people? And
Well, when you're struggling
we're
to find people.
yeah, when you're
Yeah.
struggling, yeah. When I reflect back on moments in life uh, that I've struggled to find great people, whether that was running a multi-million dollar business or running my small mom and pop shops with my dad. We had 3 or 4 businesses. Um, doing community development work, which I've done intensely for the last decade. So building volunteer teams to get things done. The search is not different. You're looking for the same quality of people, whether you're going to pay them or they're volunteer. And so the question then becomes, if you're not succeeding at finding people, if you're struggling,
Mhm.
I also teach in the book later on the rule of reflection,
Mhm.
and that as a leader, when you're really struggling, the first place you go is to the mirror, to look at yourself, to look at the development or lack thereof. And so that's really a gateway. This question is a gateway to a principle I'm going to teach later in the book about the rule of reflection.
Okay.
So excuses that you find, by the way, I don't know if my internet on my side's sticking or if it's yours, but if mine fails, just let me know. So the journey then becomes, when you're struggling, to review, reflect, take inventory. Some of the excuses I've made in the past is I just can't find them, which is kind of how I start the book.
Right.
It's how I start the curriculum. By the way, for anyone wanting to learn more, we have a great How to Hire and Keep Great People curriculum. I would love to send a link out for people to enroll in that. So that was an excuse. Another excuse was that I never use, but I hear often from leaders now. People just don't want to work. They just don't want to come to work. They don't want to show up. I hear that often. Another excuse is, I can't find. I've spent quite a bit of my life in retail. I can't find people that want to sell or that enjoy selling.
Mhm.
I can't find people that have the right schedule for my business. An excuse I hear often now: well, everyone just wants to be remote. No one actually wants to come in. And so, there's all these excuses about not being able to find people. And so it's really the question of, what complaints and excuses are you giving? Because what we're hopefully going to do is eradicate all of those myths. Every excuse that you can come up with, I can turn it into a mythical unicorn in the sky fever dream that doesn't actually exist really quickly, if hiring leader is willing to be open-minded enough. Now, there's an issue with this question, and I think I said on the last episode that we did this. We, over the last month, we have launched a new campaign because we're trying to scale our coaching business, and so we're adding clients. And so we've launched a new campaign, and it's been interesting because, now I'm getting all these business owners, leaders, CEOs, HR people responding back to this campaign. And what's really interesting is they're also giving excuses that they don't even understand are excuses. And so what I
They don't
mean by
understand
that
their own
is,
excuses?
yes, or that what they're saying is actually an excuse.
Oh, okay.
Here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes somebody will tell me, hey, Keith, what strategies are you using for building your team for hiring?
Mhm.
And Keith might respond, because I hear this often, well, we have such and such agency that does that for us. Oh, great. So what strategy are they using? We don't know. They just do the work. Or, hey, Keith, what strategy are you using for hiring? Well, we just post on Indeed. Okay, so how's that working for you? Oh, it's working great. Okay, so explain great to me. And the reason I know people don't understand that they're giving an excuse coded in purpose is because they can't explain in detail either A, how successful the strategy is, or B, what the strategy is.
Right.
And so I
And it may not be
guarantee
it.
you,
Those things don't sound like strategies.
they're not when you really strip everything back, but
Okay.
to these people, that's a strategy. And so if I could sit with their teams, I promise you we would unearth some issues that are being avoided because they think everything is perfectly okay. And where I'm going with all that is, what's a complaint you give yourself when you're struggling with finding good people? A complaint could look like, well, we hire an agency to do that, so now we're pointing the finger of blame to
To
the
somebody else.
agency,
Yeah.
to Indeed, to Glassdoor, to LinkedIn, to our sign on the window not being pretty enough. And so that then becomes a built-in excuse, a barrier to being open-minded enough to actually find really great people. That's why I told the story I told in the book, and maybe we'll get to that in a second in this chapter, because I fully believe in what I call lifestyle recruiting. And I believe lifestyle recruiting can take on many faces. It can be done on many platforms. Basically, the essence of lifestyle recruiting is being aware in every situation to notice someone great when they appear. The problem with giving excuses or blaming someone else for your hiring issues is the story you're telling me is your awareness is incredibly low when it comes to identifying great people when they appear. You're so busy deflecting blame and not looking inward that you really don't care about finding great people. Now, the problem with that honesty is people often don't want to hear that truth because they think they want to find great people. But there's only one way to measure what you think, and that's in your performance. And so you might think you want to find great people, but if you haven't gone through every measure possible to find great people, then the story you're really telling me is, I really don't want to find great people. Instead, I want to spill the milk on purpose and cry about it, and then blame someone else for it.
Wow.
And that, my friend, is a self-imposed excuse and barrier. It's easy to tear down, but it begins with willingness. And so every excuse that someone could give me on why they can't find people, I can eradicate very quickly. Not only eradicate, I can give you a strategy around it, through it, over it, because it's really, really simple. It's really simple. I wrote something yesterday that won't be published for a while, but the essence of what I wrote is recruiting is so simple because all of life is about recruiting. If you think about it, everything we do is recruiting. When I invite you into a friendship, I'm recruiting you into my life and recruiting myself to share with you. When I invite you into a social relationship, I'm recruiting you into my circle. When I invite you out for dinner, I'm recruiting you out for dinner. It's that simple. It's simply inviting people into the conversation. And so when we think of it from that perspective, everyone recruits all the time. All we're doing is desegregating the workplace and now involving it into life. That's why I tell the story in this chapter that I tell.
Do you
Because I
want to
wanted
tell the
people to
story,
see.
or do you want people to
Sure.
read it?
No, I'd love to tell it. So it was kind of a running joke when my kids were little. So we're talking 20, 25 years ago, that, every time we went out to dinner, dad always ended up talking to the waiter or waitress about working for him or shopping with him or inviting them in or giving a discount card. That's all dad did. And it kind of became this running joke. Is dad going to recruit the person this time? Like, what conversation's going to come up? And so the subtitle is,
So
it's
did you
the
really have
opposite.
those conversations with wait
Oh,
staff?
100%.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I still do to this day. To this day, I still do. If I get a cup of coffee and I love the barista, I'm like, hey, what's up? What's your name? Joe? Nice to meet you, Joe. Hey, are you in a leadership position here? Yes, I am. Great. Can I go get you a copy of my book? Wait, yeah. I hand out hundreds of books. It's like a business card. I handed out 5 last week because
Good.
it's just about being human. And if I was building a team right now, which I am on a small scale, but if I had a team of 15, 20 people, it would go up even another level. I mean, I would be recruiting people constantly. But I am recruiting customers constantly. I'm recruiting clients constantly, because here's the reason though, Keith. I believe in the culture that I create so much that if I see a great person, I not only want them to be a part of my team, but I want to share with them the empowerment of our culture. And that's where I think people miss it. I think deep down, leaders know their culture isn't quite good enough to recruit to.
Hmm.
And so they
That's
settle.
another conversation altogether. Yeah.
Yes. And I think when people because think about it, Keith, if leader doesn't enjoy work, if leader is burned out, if leader is anxious, why would they recruit to their culture?
Yeah.
But my theory is this: if you wouldn't recruit your best friend to your culture isn't good enough.
Hmm. That's kind of a
If you
scary
would,
thought.
It is, but it's true. And it is the truth. After spending so much time with the leaders, after having been one myself for 2.5 decades now, what I know is when deep down you are insecure about something, you don't invite people into the conversation, especially people you know and love, because you're protecting them from what you're scared of. And so if I'm stressed and I'm
Or
freaked out
yourself.
or yourself, that's exactly right. Yep,
Yeah.
it's exactly right.
Because when we're unsure of something, you sure as hell
But
don't
we're
want
not
to
going to
share it.
sell it. We're not going to sell it. No, we're not going to sell it or
Yeah.
share it or anything. But if I believe in my culture, and I believe that my culture is second to none from an empowerment and a standpoint of creating space for people to step into success, if I believe it is second to none, every single great person that I encounter, you better believe I'm going to invite them into the conversation, either as an employee to be part of our team or as a customer, 100% all the time. And that's how I treat it. Like I said, to this day, just yesterday, I was getting coffee at a Starbucks that I go to often. And man, this person remembered my drink, said hi to me, remembered my name. And I'm like, hey, are
This
you
person
looking for an
got a book.
opportunity? No, didn't get a book,
Oh,
but I have clients that are recruiting in that town. So I was
cool.
like, hey, are you looking for an opportunity? And they were like, no, not really right now. I'm like, hey, cool. If you ever are, let me know. Like, I'm recruiting for other people constantly because I want my clients to have the best of the best. And I believe in them. And so the idea when my kids were little were, yeah, who's dad going to talk to today? And it kind of became this funny thing, and that's just what and so to me, I had this strategic play that if waiter or waitress went above and beyond and offered dessert, because most don't, and they did it with joy and they did it with excitement and they expounded on it, and we're like, you need to try our strawberry shortcake. It is incredible. I'm like, you need to come work on my team
There's a
because
sale for
you're
you.
incredible.
Yeah.
And that's what you do, because it's just a natural part of the conversation.
I think it's so funny because, well, everybody knows that we're on a podcast and I run a podcast, and I literally recruit people to
Yeah,
be
that's
on the
right.
podcast. I literally do that. I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, how I've contacted you. I mean, and I get solicitors. I live in an
Yes.
area in Virginia here where, every week at least two people are ringing my doorbell, solar panels,
Yeah.
you want a new door, whatever it is. And today was one of those conversations, and the doorbell rings and it's later in the day, so it's like 4 o'clock ish, my time. And so and he's a young kid too. This is a young kid, and normally it's not that young. Well, he seemed like college level, just by age, just by looking at him. And so I listed off all the things, like there's 5 things, like solar, and now I can't even think about it. Anyway. And I didn't get to the 6th one, and he said, "No, I'm here to talk to you about the doorbell." Like, so it's supposed to
Oh.
put a camera on my doorbell, which I won't do. And I told him that
Right.
up front.
Right.
And I said, "Oh yeah, that's the 6th thing, because you were the 3rd person
Yeah.
in like 6 months to want to offer me a doorbell." So
Yeah.
anyway, and it's hot outside, and it's August. If ever anybody's listening to this, not in August. And so I said, "Come on in, and let's grab some water." I got bottled water downstairs in the kitchen. So he's doing his thing, and I literally told him up front, I'm literally not going to buy anything, but I'll give you practice to sell. And then
Sure.
so when I did that, and then I said, "Hey, I run a podcast. Would you like to talk about what you do, and its challenges,
Yeah.
and how you go about actually convincing somebody?" He turned me down, but I'm always doing that. I'm always kind
Yeah.
of recruiting people to just have a conversation with. And I usually, 9 times out of 10 get a positive response. So I could definitely
We're
I could definitely understand what you're talking about, recruiting people into
yeah.
your culture.
Yeah. And what's crazy is where people miss it, and there becomes a disconnect, and that is, well, I'm not a salesperson. Well, I'm not a salesperson either. It has
Right.
a and set, a really successful salesperson doesn't effort convincing someone. Those are bad salespeople. An effective salesperson simply invites you into the conversation and allows you to talk yourself into buying something.
Mhm.
A great salesperson says, here's an opportunity. I believe in it. I think it can better your life here. And then person gets set aside. And that's exactly what you did. And that's what makes you really effective and successful. And you're going to continue building success, because the crazy thing is, what the story you just told, that's all it takes to recruit people to go to work for you.
Yeah.
It's all it takes to build relationships with people. It's the same. And that's what I tell people constantly. We
There's a
talk about
backstory to
recruiting and
this, to my story, because I live in a place where you got to walk around, and I didn't want to interrupt, but he was the first door-to-door solicitor that was writing these little writing things. I'm not even sure what you call it. It's just like,
right. Yeah.
he's
Like a
like,
scooter thing. Yep.
yeah, like a little scooter. There's like a two-wheel little scooter, and
Yeah.
he literally just got to, ebb and weave, and he's going, and because normally they're walking around, they got hats on, because like 2 days ago I had two guys come out for the solar panels. They're trying to put solar panels up in my roof, and one's a Navy man, and so, and one is that the Navy man was, his daddy was a Marine. I'm a Marine. So he's telling me he was stationed, and I told him, Camp Lejeune, and I'm telling him I was stationed Camp, of course, different eras. So it's just having those, and so, yeah, and because of that conversation, just because of that conversation that we connected, and he wasn't pushing a sale. He wasn't pushing the solar
Right.
panel. He
Right.
said, here, let me give you some information. And so he texted me some information. I could just push it up, and I may actually put solar panels from this guy,
Right.
from
Right.
this guy alone, only because he stopped and had a conversation with me
Yep.
about
Yep.
his daddy.
That's all it's about. It's about planting seeds. That's all we are. We're seed planters. And when we talk about recruiting people for your team, people get so kind of caught up in themselves. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that. Have you ever asked anyone out for dinner? Like, have you ever initiated a conversation at all? Because if you have, then all you're doing is changing language. The approach isn't any different.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be as simple as, have you ever asked a buddy out for lunch? Yep. What did you say? Hey, you want to go have lunch? Okay. When you see someone great, hey, you need a job? You want a different opportunity? It's that simple. But I really, truly believe that the disconnect comes because people have an insecurity about their culture. They're not 100% sure that they can actually tell someone, if you come work for me, it is going to be an incredible experience. I can guarantee it. And you see that especially in corporate situations. It's like, well, who does your recruiting? Well, we have an agency. Well, how in the world does the agency know what your culture is about? The real answer is they don't. People aren't going to say that. Well, we have forums and we tell them what we're looking for. And who's doing the interviewing? Outside agency or someone who's going to do the training? Who's going to measure the energy of that person? Who's going to measure their presence? Where's that connection going to come from that you just talked about?
Right.
It can't come from outside agency. They can do some filtering, fine. But then all of a sudden in corporate America, the reason people don't, I have literally heard people say, hey, I'm looking for a job. And another person saying, well, you don't want to work for my company.
Well, they
And it's
definitely
like,
recruited out. Yeah, right.
That's my point. I have heard that with my own ears multiple times. And those people are often in hiring leadership management positions.
Huh.
Well, like, first of all, why are you there? And second of all, no wonder you can't build a team. Like, it just doesn't add up.
Oh.
And so
I'm sorry, I
going
don't mean to
back
be,
to
I'm
that
not laughing
question,
at you. It's just comical when I hear this, because
it is
it's
comical.
it's more frequent than I think we want to admit. Across the board.
And that's going back to the question, and we'll jump to another one. That's why that question is so important.
Well,
It's so
actually,
important.
all the following questions kind of support that. What do you
Yeah.
do? How do you keep? What's your 9 to 5 on it? Actually, all the other questions, and there's 5 support. Either it's the follow-up questions either support the fact that you're having problems, or support the
Yes.
fact that you don't have problems, because they'll clarify where it is. That's
Yes.
how these questions are outlined.
And I will say, and I've said it before, I have a lot of empathy and compassion toward hiring leaders. I have a lot of empathy and compassion toward HR people, toward small business owners, because while it is simple, it's also there is some trepidation, and I understand the trepidation of why far more don't use this strategy than do, because it does take repetition. It does take a thorough understanding of what you're looking for, who you're looking for, why you're looking for that. And the fact of the matter remains, most people have not been taught those things. Most people in those positions, they haven't studied human behavior. They haven't even thought of studying human behavior. They go get their cup of coffee, and the last thing on their mind is watching the baristas to see who's great. I enjoy that part. I enjoy the psychology of it. I enjoy the empowerment of it. And yes, we can go into, well, if you don't enjoy those things, why are you in that position? Let's just have a reality check. A reality check is many people in these positions are in these positions because they have to make a paycheck, and we can't lose sight of that. I know I go on shows and come on your show, and I get really excited about all this stuff, but I want people to understand, I always keep in mind that it is highly possible that 80% of the people in ownership, management, leader, HR positions are there for the same reason employees are. And that is because they have bills to pay. And so when you look at it from that perspective, all of a sudden you have a lot of compassion and empathy for these people, because when they leave the job, they're not going to get a cup of coffee. The last thing on their mind is, how good is the barista? My point to all of this is, it is incredibly possible to have so much fun with it. It's incredibly possible for it to not be a negative burden. It's incredibly possible for people to actually enjoy the process of seeking great people, of building a great team. And look, these strategies work on social media. These strategies work remotely. Because they're human behavior strategies. All I'm looking for are for great people to arise around me. And I see that on LinkedIn. I see that on Instagram. I see that on Facebook. I see it on the internet, on websites. I see it remotely. Greatness rises no matter the platform. And that's all I'm searching for. And when I see it and recognize it, I'm going to tap into it. And my two goals in recruiting for business are, I'm either recruiting you to be a customer, or I'm recruiting you to help me network, or I'm recruiting you to be on my team. And it's just it's not manipulative. I'm just inviting you into the conversation because I think I have something to offer, and I think you have something to offer. And that is a beautiful thing. That's humanity at its best. And so, like I said, and I know we need to wind it down, but through this new campaign that we're doing, I'm really hearing the echo of disconnection from business owners and HR people. When I ask them their strategies, very few can give an answer, or they're very vague. When I ask them their processes, well, we sub it out. So-and-so does this. Okay, why? Rarely are they able to answer that question. What that tells me is, after 25 years of being in the human behavior industry, whether it was in ministry or retail or life coaching or mental health work, what that tells me is they don't know. Because when the human spirit can't clarify, it can't clarify because it doesn't understand. And when we don't understand, we go, we're fine. We don't need help.
Yeah.
All of us
do
do it.
to be.
All of us do it. And so my encouragement is, do that self-reflection. Let's talk.
We're going to get to that.
About all this.
We're going to get to that chapter.
That may be my favorite chapter if I'm measuring all the favorite chapters.
Well, there's lots of chapters yet to go. We have just completed chapter.
Are we then halfway through?
Well, there's 20 chapters. There's 20 chapters in the book. We just reviewed chapter 8, which is a powerful chapter because it really then we're for you it was chapter 4 that we're kind of flipping the coin and now we're diving in. But this really talks about it. This is, I think, the first time, if I'm sure, that you actually use the word lifestyle, because that's actually a section in the chapter, lifestyle recruiting. It's actually through, I'm not going to go to the page, but you talk about the humanity of it all, the spirituality of it all. And now we're really kind of helping people understand that you have to put in the effort, but it's not just a job. It's the overall experience of connecting with human beings and putting them into places of, respect, value, and somewhere where they can actually, belong. And that's what we want to do. We want to belong.
I want to add one more thing, because you ignited a thought within me. I really want people to know, when you understand the art of non-segregation. So in other words, people get done at a job and they say, I don't want to think about work. I just want to go home, have a beer, play with my kids, whatever whatever that looks like for people.
Right.
That is the art of segregation. When you're running from something, you're segregating it from something else. And what I want people to understand is, when you can find that rhythm where nothing is segregated, it actually becomes less stressful, because you're just allowing your awareness and presence to be what it is at the moment in time. And so oftentimes I've had people say, yeah, but Mitch, I don't want to think about recruiting when I'm on the golf course. I'm out golfing. And I'm like,
Well, actually,
yeah, but how
that's
much
a perfect place.
Well, yeah, in my head, I'm like, well, you're crazy. But second of all, but my point is, when you just allow life to happen and just be, and don't worry about segregating it, it actually takes less effort and you feel better. And it has this rhythm and syncope that actually really works out. And so I wanted to throw that out there to clarify to people. I'm not talking
Well,
about,
let me ask you a question. Do you golf?
yes.
You golf?
So I used to
And
a long
that's it.
time
That's
ago.
it. I have a rule. I got a God is the reason why I asked that.
Talk to me. I'm
Um,
trying to get back into it though, because my son is really into it, and so I want to get back into it to play golf with him. But yes,
so going through my doctorate degree, becoming a doctor, I've met some really incredible people. And I actually met some lady who ran a nonprofit, and I won't go into all the details, up in New Jersey.
right.
And she didn't, and she's an older lady at this point, and she didn't ever learn how to play golf, but she learned to play golf because she told me that the people that she connected with, that's where
Yep,
business actually happened.
that's right.
It happened on the
That's right.
golf course, not in a business room. And that was
Why?
the
What's the reason?
because that's where
There's a
people
reason.
connected. That's where they congregated. That's where the people were. You talk about, where do I
Yeah.
need to go to find people? You literally say
Go
that
to
in the book.
go to where
That's
they
where they are.
exist.
They're on the golf
Go to where
course.
they exist. Yeah.
Go where
Yeah,
they
and
are.
when you're coaching and connecting and networking, with my clients, as much as possible. So if they're in the restaurant industry, anytime we have coaching sessions, I pull them out of their restaurant. I don't go to them. They come to me as much as humanly possible. And it's for the same reason, because it's really difficult to connect when you have those stresses, those distractors, and you've shifted minds. When you can really get people to relax and kind of come into this place of their humanity, their true essence, then you can really find that connective point. And my son is in commercial real estate, and that's why he got into golf, because all the old heads in commercial real estate said, hey, this is where all the deals are done, on the golf course. If you
Yeah.
want to get contracts, especially in commercial real estate, you play golf. And so he loves it. He's an athlete and he's competitive, and so he has a great time. But there's so much truth to that. And that's why I think, people are missing it. If I go, again, we'll use it because we've used it. If I go to Starbucks, I'm getting to see someone in their work environment, on the clock, doing a job, engaging with teammates, engaging with customers, and engaging with me. What more do I need? I don't need a
Much.
resume at that
I
point.
don't much.
I have
Yeah.
a living, breathing resume at that point. I
Yeah.
don't need another resume. And so people have asked me, Mitch, but what do I do if I'm hiring remotely? If I was hiring remotely right now, you know what I would do? I would network with as many people as possible in as many cities as possible. And I would tell those people, here's who I'm looking for. If you see anyone like that anywhere, let me know. I'll contact them and I'll hire them remotely. That's how I would recruit remotely. I wouldn't go to a website. Why? I know too many people. You could hire someone in Virginia for me right now. Why not? Hiring remotely. And it works. It works. Yeah. I mean, it's It's an interesting thing because psychologically most people just aren't past that barrier. But yeah, I love that. Take people to the golf course. Go to the
Yeah.
golf course. Go to the
And
bookstore,
but
which
it
is the
was
story you
specific.
shared.
It was specific. The golf course
Yeah.
is the place.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's where the money's at. Well, Mitch Gray, this was a great review of chapter 8. Thank you so much for being
Love it.
on a special edition of the Question God podcast. You take care, okay?